Hey everyone, welcome to a Week 8 recap edition of the West Coast Best Coast Football Show here on the Off the Mic Sports Network. I'm Mike Mayer. Thanks for tuning in. A wild Week 8 in college football. We'll talk about the West Coast teams. Just a sort of big overview. A wild weekend all around the country. Georgia goes to Texas and hands Texas their first loss. It looks like Oregon's going to be the number one team in the country before you know it, which is a big deal for Oregon. It's been a long time since they've been at the top of the polls, so that'll be really neat to see them back near the top of this thing. And Alabama drops their second game of the season, and here we are in early to mid-October, and they've already got two losses. That hasn't happened in almost 2 decades, since Nick Saban's first year in 2007. That they lost 2 games before the end of October. That's crazy. So that happens. I mean, you have Iowa State winning, BYU winning on a miracle, undefeated teams in the Big 12. And it was a wild weekend for the former Pac-12 teams, which we'll talk about. But I want to start here with a bunch of former Pac-12 names over at Miami. Miami came back from the dead and beat Cal in that crazy game a couple weeks ago. Just a demoralizing loss for Cal, but Cal blew that game against Miami. Cam Ward brought them back. Mario Cristobal has not found a way to screw things up. Damian Martinez has actually turned into a really good. I mean, we already knew he was a great running back. They're kind of balancing, between him and Mark Fletcher, but Damian Martinez has been awesome. But really what this comes down to, and I said this on the preview show, that I was like, Ashton Jeanty could potentially be in the driver's seat for the Heisman. Based off the way Cam Ward's playing and what Miami's schedule dictates, if Miami goes undefeated, Cam Ward's winning the Heisman Trophy. This was an all-star performance. They needed every touchdown that they got from him. He goes 21 of 32 for 319 yards and 4 touchdowns. Cam is unbelievable. He made some crazy throws, some crazy Cam Ward-esque plays. And Miami wins 52-45 in their biggest challenge of the year against Louisville on the road in a crazy, crazy, crazy game. It's just I want to believe that a guy from Boise State is not going to get snubbed, especially given the numbers that Ashton Jeanty is putting up. But the way Cam Ward is playing, and if he continues to play at this level, and if Miami gets through the rest of their schedule, and then they probably wind up facing Clemson for the ACC championship, depending on how certain things play out the rest of the season, Cam Ward's going to win the Heisman. And I love Cam. I've met Cam. He's a great guy, great kid. I just think what Ashton Jeanty is on pace to do deserves a lot more attention. And he's going to have a big stage next week against UNLV. And we'll talk about UNLV getting a big win against a former Pac-12 school. UNLV has been in the West Coast news a lot this year. So that's going to be a huge, monstrous game between UNLV, Boise State next week. Boise State on a bye. So I wanted to hit that off the top here to just kind of, before I ran through all these games from the former Pac-12 teams. So Miami is now 7-0. We'll see how the rest of the season gets sorted out. But I think the biggest challenger now is not Travis Hunter. And I'll talk about Colorado a little bit later on and why I think Travis Hunter's status for the Heisman is kind of, come and gone. This is Cam Ward's Heisman right now at this point. Unless, he falters or Ashton Jeanty just continues to put up these crazy, insane numbers or even goes past what he's been doing and the pace that he is on. So we'll see. So let's I kind of dabbled in this a little bit because I was kind of late in getting my preview show up. But Oregon does beat Purdue 35-0. Dylan Gabriel, only 4 incompletions, 290 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jordan James, 2 rushing touchdowns for the Ducks. The Ducks are undefeated still. And now the Oregon Ducks, man, are going to more than likely be the number 1 team in the country. But their stretch coming up, man, is going to really test this team to see where they at, because this is the closing stretch that Oregon has to finish off their season. They have Illinois at home in Autzen, which is going to be the CBS window game. Illinois gets a huge win over Michigan this week. Then they go to Michigan in Ann Arbor. I'm going to be at that game, which is truly going to be, both a interesting experience and a very awesome experience, because I have Ohio State in my blood. But it would be great to see my guy John Jansen over there in Ann Arbor. I've never been to the Big House, so that'll be an experience. So Oregon's going to have to go into the Big House. And yes, Michigan is not as good as advertised, but they're going to play everybody in that building tough. So it'll be an interesting test for Oregon to go on the road. Then they get Maryland. We got to talk about Maryland and USC, because USC's got some problems. Then they go to Camp Randall, and Wisconsin's playing some good football too in the Big Ten. And then they get Washington to close out that season, and Washington has been the bane of Dan Lanning's existence. So can Oregon navigate this with one loss? Because now you've still got Indiana, who's still undefeated and may not lose a game until they get to play Michigan, and then they have Ohio State at the end of the season. So Indiana's in a really good spot, and then Penn State's in a really good spot too, and they've still got Ohio State on their schedule. So Oregon's still got some work to do, but Oregon, after this win in a game that they absolutely, even on a short week off an emotional win, they came in, they handled business against a bad Purdue team and win 35-0. Dylan Gabriel, fringe Heisman contender, he's probably not going to get there based off the way Cam Ward and Ashton Jeanty are playing. Those are the two real clubhouse leaders right now. A surprising result, UCLA goes across the country to Piscataway, New Jersey, and gets a win at Rutgers 35-32. Ethan Garbers was fantastic in this game. Only 6 incompletions, 383 yards, 5 total touchdowns, 4 passing. He had 1 rushing to go with 48 yards rushing. He was fantastic. This was maybe the best game Ethan Garbers has ever played. An amazing performance for UCLA. Deshaun Foster gets his first Big Ten win. They win on the road, which is something that USC has not done this season. That's saying a lot. Keegan Jones, big game receiving, 114 yards, 1 touchdown. Maliki Matavao, the tight end, 6 catches for 104 yards receiving. And UCLA, man, I give them a ton of credit, because I have left this team for dead in the basement of this conference. And I got to hand it to Deshaun Foster and the offensive staff, Eric Bieniemy. They got this done. Rutgers is clearly not what they were after the hot start to the season. They've dropped a few games. But to go cross the country, play at a 9 a.m. body clock, and win this football game, that is incredibly impressive for Deshaun Foster and UCLA. So I give it to them, and I give them a ton of credit for UCLA getting that win. In the same window, this was the reverse of what I expected. ASU falters at Cincinnati. Jeff Sims, only 155 yards passing. Cam Scadaboo, 75 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. He also had 4 catches for 33 yards. Jordan Tyson had a nice game, 6 catches for 108 yards receiving. But really what this came down to, man, Arizona State, and Kenny Dillingham said this after the game, and he was making jokes, and he apologized on Twitter after the fact. But Ian Hershey and Nathan Hawks, their kickers, 0 for 3. And that's 9 points right there. That cost them the game. They lose 24-14 at Cincinnati. And Cincinnati and Scott Satterfield, I mean, having a nice season. I think they're 5-2 now. Like, don't look now, but yeah, ASU, this was a head scratcher. I mean, you kind of could see it coming, especially, in that usually that, local body clock 9 a.m. Pacific, or what was Mountain Time now. And going into that noon Eastern window was going to be a problem. But yeah, Arizona State, they lose because of their kicking issue, and that's a problem. So Arizona State drops their second game of the season and can't get to bowl eligibility, unfortunately. Another disappointing loss. Cal, oh my goodness, man! Like, this team has just not been able to execute it at the end of games, man. They're up by 13 in the fourth quarter. They lose 24-23 to NC State. Derek Morris misses a chip shot field goal with 90 seconds to go in the game. Fernando Mendoza throws for 282 yards. Javion Thomas, 78 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Jack Andres, 9 for 101 receiving. But man, Cal, these late game gaffes, they're blowing leads. They're not able to come back. They're not able to come through in the clutch. And this has been the story of the season for Justin Wilcox and Cal. And just losing to a really underachieving, kind of bad NC State team in their own house, giving up a late touchdown. Hollywood Smothers, I believe, is the one who scored the touchdown. What a name. What a name. But I feel bad for my guys, Shane Vereen and Roxy Bernstein. The Bears have really been disappointing since the early start to the season. Washington State's been able to pick themselves up off the mat. They win big at home against Hawaii, 42-10. John Mateer, 5 total touchdowns in this game, 295 passing, 3 TDs through the air, only 4 incompletions. He had 34 yards rushing, 8 carries for 34 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Chris Hudson, the Oregon transfer, 7 catches for 90 yards receiving and a touchdown. Washington State's bowl eligible. They didn't make it to bowl eligibility last year. They're 6-1. Good for them. Jake Dickert, I love him. John Mateer's turned into a really good quarterback. It's going to be interesting to see where Washington State can go with this Mountain West schedule that they have, and already getting past, they'll have to play Oregon State near the back half of the season. They've already beaten Washington in the Apple Cup earlier in the season. So it's going to be interesting to see what Washington State can do the rest of the way with predominantly Mountain West opponents in Oregon State on their schedule. All right, then we get to, I got some thoughts on this, because I've seen a lot of USC's home games, and I didn't go to the Penn State game last week because I had baseball priorities with the Guardians, Tigers game 5, do or die game. But USC goes to Maryland in a game that they absolutely should win. Maryland just lost at home about 8-9 days ago to Northwestern, who's one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. Got destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. There's questions about Mike Loxley's job, the head coach of Maryland. And USC has the lead in this game by 14 points. And Maryland's able to come back in this game at multiple fronts. 2 minutes to go in this game, 4th and 1. You can ice the game. You're up 28-22. Maryland had gone for 2 and, done the analytics thing to steal a point and potentially go for the win. This is after USC had gotten a stop. They didn't gain very much yardage, and they put it on the foot of Michael Lance, who their kicker, who missed a field goal last game, and they can't get it blocked correctly, and Maryland blocks the kick. Why not go for it on 4th and 1? Why not go for it on 4th and 1 there and try to end the game there with Maryland running low on timeouts? And they don't do it. They kick the field goal. It's blocked, and then Billy Edwards leads the Terps down the field. Billy Edwards was big in this game, 39 of 50, 373 and 2 touchdowns passing. He was fantastic in this game. And Maryland gets down there at the end and wins 29-28. And USC has lost 3 in a row. They're under 500 now. They're 3-4 this season. 3 straight losses. 9 of the last 14 games under Lincoln Riley, dating back to last year, have been losses. We officially have a coaching problem here. And I've been hinting at this for a few weeks. This goes to the Minnesota game, the Michigan game that they should have won. These are inexcusable coaching-led losses. Like, this is inexcusable how you could go to Maryland. I understand it is a West Coast team going east, but it's a 1 p.m. body clock. You can't even go into that excuse. You have a 2-touchdown lead on the road against a team that lost to Northwestern. You have a 4th and 1 with 2 minutes to go in the game with a superior offensive group of talented players, and you don't believe in your team to go for a first down? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And 9 of your last 14 games you have lost. What is different from Lincoln Riley now than what they had with Clay Helton, who everybody called Gomer and everybody didn't believe in? What is different now about USC than was different 3 years ago? This is totally unacceptable. To be under 500 and not having the ability to win on the road against Maryland. Maryland! That is totally on the head coach. And there is really a coaching problem. I texted a bunch of people who cover USC They expected this loss. This is officially become a coaching issue. The defense has played their ass off a lot this season. That was a shield for Lincoln Riley through that disappointing season last year with Caleb Williams because he wouldn't move off of Alex Grinch. Now it is completely on the head coach. You got the Minnesota game. You can't lose that game on the road. The Michigan game where Michigan couldn't complete a forward pass and they still win. They had 50 yards of passing in the game. And then this game against Maryland, a team who lost to Northwestern last week, not 9 days ago, in their own building, having questions about their coach being on the hot seat. You have a 2-touchdown lead, and you blow that game. No excuses. And then Penn State, we can talk about that, having a 2-touchdown lead at home against a top 5 team in Penn State. But hey, that's Penn State. They're supposed to be that good. But this team is wholly underachieved, and we really need to have a serious conversation about where USC and this program are going under Lincoln Riley. Because clearly the first year was a complete and utter outlier. Because this program has not been nearly where they were in year one under Lincoln Riley. And I just, in the Big Ten, if you can't beat teams like Minnesota and Maryland, that is just not. Penn State and Michigan's one thing, but this is one of the worst Michigan teams in the last handful of years since COVID. But Penn State, I understand, but you have a 2-touchdown lead at home. But Minnesota and Maryland, you can't. Minnesota plays hard under PJ Fleck, but Maryland, I had so many thoughts on this. Miller Moss is playing so tough. 34 of 50, 336, 3 touchdowns. Woody Marks been great for them. I mean, Jacoby Lane, Deuce Robinson, Kyron Hudson all have a rushing touchdown, but it's just like, you lost the game. And I don't know where this program goes, man. The season's already been over. They're under 500. It's just inexcusable. Inexcusable. We officially have a coaching problem at USC. Like, it's really, I just don't know what to say, man. I really don't know what to say. They got Rutgers on a Friday night. Rutgers is already pissed off. These are two really underachieving teams in the last few weeks. That's going to be, I don't know how many people are going to be at the Coliseum on Friday night. Colorado, they get themselves up off the mat. Shedeur Sanders, they beat Arizona 34-7. Credit to Colorado, man. They're actually really good. They're in that second tier in the Big 12. They won't win the league, but they've been impressive, man. Like, I may not like them. I may not like what Coach Prime and what some of those guys represent, and there are a lot of flash. But these guys have come out and played really impressive. Shedeur, again, I mean, yeah, he had 2 interceptions, but 23 of 33, 250, 2 touchdowns. LeJontay Wester, the leading receiver, 8 for 127. And Noah Fifita was not good, 138 yards passing. They limited Tedero McMillan to 5 catches for 38 yards. And yeah, Colorado wins 34-7 at Arizona. Another very impressive road win in the Big 12. So I got to hand it to Colorado. Like, they're going to get to bowl eligibility here, which to me, given what I thought of them about a month ago, is a huge accomplishment. And credit to Coach Prime. And credit to, Shedeur, credit to Travis Hunter, who didn't play his best game. And honestly, I think one of the big takeaways outside of the fact that Colorado is really, really good, and one of those second tier, like, Big 12 teams, is that Travis Hunter's Heisman status is done. It's done. Like, he had 2 catches for 17 yards in this game, and he only had 1 tackle defensively. Like, and they won by 27 points. Travis Hunter is not winning the Heisman Trophy. But Coach Prime is doing an unbelievable job there, and Shedeur Sanders is firmly moving himself into the top tier of potentially being the next Browns quarterback if he doesn't want politic his way out of going to Cleveland. And I never thought I would have said that about a month ago. But this team has really, really impressed me a lot this season, especially after that really deflating loss to Kansas State last week. They've played really tough. Another really disappointing loss for Stanford. I mean, yeah, granted, they were facing a top 25 team in SMU. SMU hits an 80-yard play on the first play from scrimmage, and Stanford just was trailing the whole way. They lose 40-10. Kevin Jennings, the quarterback for SMU, goes for 322 passing and 3 TDs. SMU's really, really good under Rhett Lashley. Stanford gives up 179 yards rushing. Elijah Brown plays quarterback. He had 2 interceptions in this game. Stanford's just not very good. They had I said it before, and I'll say it again. They had their big moment against Syracuse, and that's really their season. They're just not. Even against middle tier ACC teams like Virginia Tech, they're just not very good. So we'll see how Stanford can do the rest of the season. I don't anticipate them being a bowl team. This is clearly a work in progress. I mean, this is year 2, and you're starting in a new conference. But yeah, Stanford's really kind of, this is what they are. They're not a great team. They're not going to be as talented as some of the upper echelon teams in the ACC, and it's just, yeah, SMU's really good. That's really what this came down to. Oregon State, another disappointing loss. They lose to UNLV. They had a chance on the final play. There might have been a pass interference. It was pretty bang. But UNLV gets the win 33-25 late on Saturday night. Malik Williams, don't look now like you can forget about who Matthew who? Sluka? Who? Malik Williams, 3 total touchdowns, 1 passing, 2 rushing. Ricky White, the third, 9 catches for 88 yards receiving and a touchdown. UNLV's really good, man. And like I mentioned earlier on, like UNLV, Boise State could be really, I mean, outside of, Navy and Army and the service academies are potentially in the mix for that group of 5 auto bid into the college football playoff. UNLV and Boise is going to be a monster game for who potentially can make the playoff, because Navy and Army both have to play Notre Dame. So that group of 5 spot is up for grabs, but UNLV is really good. Giovanni McCoy, the quarterback's been really impressive. Has 231 yards passing, 81 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Anthony Hackerson in the running game did really well, 61 yards rushing and a touchdown. But yeah, Beavs just, like they're facing these upper tier teams in the Mountain West, or when they played Oregon. I mean, hell, they lost to Nevada, which was kind of a head-scratching loss. But yeah, I mean, UNLV is a really good team, and Oregon State, just came up short at the end. They had a chance to potentially tie and send it to overtime, but they didn't come up with the play at the end. And then Utah, another loss. This is the exact same thing that we saw last season with this team. It's just, if they don't have Cam Rising, this is just not a very good football team. Kyle Whittingham's an amazing coach, but they lose at home and only score they only score a touchdown in this game. And it's an offensive touchdown with Isaac Wilson. 13-7, TCU beats Utah. Josh Hoover goes for 263 passing for Texas Christian, TCU. Utah gives up 132 yards rushing to the Horned Frogs. Offensively, this was a struggle for Utah. 12 first downs, only 2 for 15 on third down, and 267 yards of total offense. This is the problem with Utah when they don't have a dynamic quarterback, and Isaac Wilson is just not ready to be a starter at the Division I level. 199 yards passing, 1 TD. You're just not going to beat even middle of the road Big 12 teams like a TCU like that. Mekhi Bernard, 55 yards rushing. Money Park, 79 yards receiving and a touchdown, but they only get 1 touchdown in this game. And the ceiling for Utah after being the preseason Big 12 pick, this is not going to be a pretty year. They're going to be fighting to get the bowl eligibility at this point. Like they're going to be fighting, man, because there's some good teams in the Big 12, and I mean they've dropped some tough games. They dropped one to Arizona. They dropped one to Arizona State. They still got to play BYU in the Holy War. So it's not going to be pretty, man. And I love Kyle Whittingham. I love that program, man. But that's a rough one to drop at home late at night to TCU and only score a touchdown. So that's week 8 for the West Coast teams. Thanks for watching. We'll have a lot more content on the NFL side throughout the weekend, and also we'll be doing some wrestling content as well. I will talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye.